It's Wednesday, October the 16th. Lake level is right at 912. It's about 3 feet below normal winter pool and probably about 5 feet below summer pool. Water temperature this morning is like 62, 63 degrees. It's finally starting to cool down. We had a real big major cold front come through this past weekend, which is what we've been needing, is to get that water temperature down, get some of the shad and the fish moving. I've been at Lake of the Ozarks most of last week, but I did get to fish Monday, and I fished again today. But they had a big tournament over the weekend, the Champion Charger Owners Tournament. I think they had about 120 boats. And it looked like the first day of that front, they caught there was over 50 limits of fish caught, which is pretty impressive. And then the next day, it looked like it got a lot slower. It was like 25 limits. Still not a lot of big fish being caught. I think just under 5 pounds was big bass. But I have found today, a lot of my bite, the bottom bite, it seems like it's kind of disappeared. I'm not getting bit on the bottom with a jig as good as I was. And I found today that a lot of the bait's moving with this cold water. And, a lot of times when these big cold fronts come through in the fall, that's what we're wanting. But we expect the fish to react right away. And it seems like it takes, 5 to 7 days after a cool down for the fish to really start moving and doing some things a little bit different. But I've been finding some big groups of shad about halfway back to 3/4 of the way back into creeks. And the fish are starting to follow them. Depends where the shad are and how deep they are and what I'm throwing. But today we caught them, we caught some good on spinnerbait. And what I was throwing was a 1 ounce spinnerbait. I don't even know the brand name of this one. I picked it up at Fitz's Tackle Store up at Osage Beach. But it's one a local guy makes. But what I'm doing with this big heavy spinnerbait, I may fish it 5 foot or I may drop it down to 20 foot. Depends where I'm seeing the fish in the shad. And when they're suspended like that, there's a lot of different baits that I'll throw. We caught some on that. We also caught some on big swim bait. We caught some on a slab spoon, and also this new spoon of James Watson's worldwide spoon made by the same company that makes River to Sea, same company that makes the Whopper Plopper. And my Whopper Plopper bite, it seems like early, the first half hour, maybe hour in the morning, I get a few bites on it. But I think as the water cools down and we get some of them big gizzard shad moving up closer to the bank, that Whopper Plopper bite, will get a little bit better. There's still been a drop shot bite. But with that thermocline, now that it's broke up, some of the fish are still in that 30-foot range, but there's also a lot of them that have moved out over them deeper trees in 60 to 80 foot of water. And they'll be anywhere from 30 to 45 feet deep. It just all depends. A lot of times you'll be out there either drop shot and a vertical jig and a spoon in 60 foot of water and maybe a treetop that's coming up to about 40 foot, and you'll see the fish streak up off bottom. Once that thermocline breaks up, there's no oxygen level at any certain depth that's any better. So a lot of times them fish go a lot deeper, 50, 55 feet. Some of them will move shallower. Now, we did also catch some on a 7/16 5 fish lures ultimate finesse jig. And these fish I caught up on the banks in those same creeks that I'm looking for the shad. But we caught some fish off of the rock transitions and laydowns. We had to make a lot of casts to get a few bites, but the bites, were keeper bites. Seemed like the more numbers of fish were out in the centers of the creeks. If you find them shad all the way in the backs of the creeks, say 12 feet or less, I would probably throw a square bill underneath the shad or a smaller spinnerbait instead of the 1 ounce. And I was also catching some I think it's I can never say this, Picasso head. And what I was throwing on backfish, you can throw a lot of different baits. You can throw like a paddle tail swim bait, but I seem to have a little bit better luck with a fluke. I think sometimes with this scrounger head setup, that if you got a swim bait with too big of a tail, the scrounger head doesn't wobble as well. It seems to get a lot better action with a straight tail swim bait. something similar to this. If you're going to throw it on just a straight jig head, I'd probably throw like a 3.8 Kitech or a Rage Swimmer by Strike King. And just, try to count the bait down to the depth that you see the fish. And just, work the swim bait or the spinner bait, just a steady retrieve back. Some of the spinnerbait fish we caught, we actually let the bait go to bottom, rip it real fast, let it drop back down, just kind of yo-yoing it back. And usually, when you get a bite on either the swim bait or the spinnerbait, it's a pretty violent strike. I mean, they knock slack in your line, but sometimes today, a few times, different times, we found they were hitting the bait 2 or 3 times before they'd get it. Almost like an Alabama rig bite where they'd go boop, boop, boop. You just have to keep real and slow and steady, then all of a sudden it would load up. But, that's just going to get better. And another thing to look for, the water temperature's getting right, and as these shad are moving back up a little shallower, the fish are going to follow. It's going to be time to throw a wiggle wart and a rock crawler. I haven't caught any on it recently, but it's something that should be happening, especially early in the morning. Get an overcast day, or wind will be the main deal. If you get wind throughout the day, try to fish the rock transitions where it goes from like bluff rock, real straight vertical ledge, down to bigger chunk rock, and just paralleling them banks there with either a spinnerbait or a crankbait. But the fishing's going to get a lot better now that we've got the cooler nights and not as hot during the day. I mean, it seemed like we went from summertime. We haven't had much of a fall yet, and all of a sudden it seemed like it went to winter. It's 40-something degrees yesterday morning. But spend a lot more time in the creeks, and even the deep creeks down lake. Get in the centers of them. It might be 100-foot deep, but the bait and the fish will get out there in the middle of them creeks as they start migrating back. And a lot of times, the clearer the water, they won't go real shallow, but they'll stay suspended out in the center of them creeks over deep trees. And that's where a spoon seems to do a lot better than a drop shot. You catch a little bit better fish. And usually once you get them fired up on a spoon, you can just drop it down and catch one after the next. Still a little bit of a spoon bite around the deep boat docks, in the end stalls. Another thing that's going to pick up too as these fish move up is the shallow jig bite on the docks. I still don't have a real consistent bite around the docks. I have to fish quite a few docks to get a fish, but that's going to do nothing but get better. So there's several tournaments going on this weekend. Lake's going to be a little busy. I'm looking forward to the cooler temperatures, the water cooling down, the bait and the fish moving. So I think we're going to start getting into a good fall bite in the next couple of weeks. So till next week, good luck, good fishing.